Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Catherine Beltran, and you're going to be with me for, I'm going to say the next hour. I won't talk that full time, but I will leave a good set of time for some Q&As. So if you don't want to ask those right out of the gate, you're going to hold on to them. Totally fair. But if you do have any of those questions, pop them again into the Q&A. I do have my lovely right-hand woman, Allie, on. She's going to be kind of behind the scenes, but she'll be helping me out with those questions. So if you have anything, I promise you, we will not judge you. We have all been a new Redtail user at some point. So what may be something super, super, super random, but very helpful, please put those into the Q&A. Again, as a little housekeeping reminder, there is the chat function as well. I do ask that we keep the questions in the Q&A instead. But if for any reason we have some technical difficulties because technology just doesn't like us today, please let me know in the chat so I can course correct that ASAP. Besides that, though, I will be toggling between our PowerPoint and our Redtail demo database to really, again, enforce some of these topics that we have in here. But once it's all wrapped up, we'll send a follow-up that has some helpful resources as well as the recording of this session. So with that said, I don't want to waste any more of your time. Let's get at it. So end of year cleanup. What in the world does this really entail? What do you have in store for us today? Well, today we're going to hit a couple of topics. So we're going to start off with the lovely, where do I even begin? Where do I start? What data should I focus in on? What tips do we have that have really worked well for us? How do we set ourselves up for success going into 2025? So how do we maintain that? And then more importantly, how in the world can we help you with this all? So that's our agenda for today. We'll go through it again, kind of slide by slide, but I will slide back and forth between here and my demo database. So let's answer that first question. Where do I start? I know we've all been here. We can hop into our database and we're looking at it going, oh my gosh, this is a trash can fire at best. Well, where do you start? Really actually starts with a process and having the capability to stick to that process. Now, when I talk about process, I'm not talking about strictly a workflow. I know that's what we always think about when we think about a process. I'm thinking about the whole concept of it all. Where do I really want to begin? What data is just a steaming pile of garbage? Where can I get assistance from my coworkers? How do I get the buy-in? How do I do all of this? So again, it will end up becoming a workflow in itself, but you really have to take yourself into it and sell it to yourself first. If you can't buy into cleaning up your database, you can't exactly rely on anyone else in your office to do the same. So again, we create that process and we stick to it. Well, what exactly does that process look like? What data should I even focus in on? Again, you can look at your CRM and there are a million things in there, I'm sure of, but we want to just kind of drill this in. What specifically should I worry about? So we're going to go through a couple of these, and then this is where I'm really going to hop into Redtail. So 1, the current state of your current contact data. I'm not going to call anyone out on this. I know we all have some cleanup, ourselves included, but we want to make sure that what we have in there is accurate. So this is going to include things along the lines of your statuses, your categories, your keywords, the Rolodex information in itself, the notes that we have in there, the families that we have built out in there. Again, your contact record as a whole. So we want to make sure that that is in fact accurate, which leads you into number 2. Well, what data is missing? Again, I'm not going to say anyone is perfect. We all have a little bit of areas that maybe are a little bit better than others, and that's perfectly fine. We want to just make sure that going forward, we get all areas that are really important up to the same speed. So missing contact information could follow that same set of data, your status, your category, your sources, those keywords, family records, phone numbers, emails, addresses themselves. Those are all things that can be searched upon, can be reported on to help make sure that we're actually seeing and showing all of this information. Other things to consider are going to be those things along the lines of old activities. Again, not going to call anyone out, but I have hopped into databases in the past where we're looking at the past due and we're looking at like 10,000 past due activities. If you were to roll that over, just imagine your day. I would cry for you. That's insane. Like that is way too much. We want to make sure that we nip that so that way going forward, we're not looking at a bunch of past due activities that are really quite relevant and should be completed today, tomorrow, in the future, we make sure it stays on our agenda, on our plate. The last, very similar in concept, those outdated open workflows. I'll say it now. Sometimes I have some great ideas when it comes to our processes and workflows. Others, not so much. And we'll roll them out and I'll look at them and I'll go, ooh, that was a really bad idea. Well, instead of just leaving them open and hoping for the best, we want to make sure that we close out the ones that do in fact need to be closed out. So we want to stay on top of those. Again, I've seen it all the time where we build out a bunch of workflows, we're hoping for the best, and then they stay in there. And then this year goes by, and then next year goes by. And then we go and look at it in 2026 and we see workflows from 2023. That should not happen. We don't want that to happen. Again, the end of the day, good data is what's going to help make your day efficient. So let's hop into the database and talk about some of this here and so that we can see it in real time. So let me get on over here. Now keep in mind, mine is completely a demo database, so we can mess around, click around here to our heart's content. You obviously have legit client information. This is, again, where you really want to hone in on why it's so important. So let's talk about that whole contact information. So I do have my good old fake contact here. We've got Margaret, aka Maggie Investor. So what kind of items, again, should immediately come to mind when it comes to good, clean, end of year data to set yourselves up for success in 2025? I'm actually going to say right over here with contact details. If you want to pull a true client list from your database, but you don't use status, everyone in here is listed as not specified, you've just made your life 10 times harder than necessary. Status is a completely customizable field that helps segment your book of business. This really should just help answer who is in your database. So this should include things along the lines of clients, prospects, center of influences. This could include relatives of contacts. I do not recommend you getting super, super specific here because you will run into a problem where if you're like, ooh, they're both a tax client and an insurance client, and they're part of our wealth management. Well, you can only have one status at a time. So don't get this list where it's so specific and 90 options long. This should really max out at about 12. I do not recommend having anything more than that, just because, again, you do find yourself getting into this pickle. So again, just answer, who is this person in my database? Below that is that category concept. Categories where you get to attach that value associated with that person. So if you have a client, let's think about, again, just your client list right now. You may have had clients that have been with you for 20 years. You could have a client that just onboarded last week. There is going to be a difference within them. That could boil down to AUM. That could boil down to how much they refer business to you. This can come into just, hey, would you pick up the phone for them at 4:59 on a Friday? These are all those different values that you associate either consciously or subconsciously with these contacts. Where people get tripped up on, though, is that category is not limited to just your clients. Think about the center of influences or professional contacts that you have in your database. These could be attorneys, these could be CPAs, these could be insurance agents. They could just be other random professionals in your database. You can associate a category with all of those statuses that you have as well. This is where you can get a little bit more specific. So this list does tend to be a lot longer than your status, and that's not a bad thing. Again, it's really there so that way we can have those easy reports, those easy searches. Instead of us sitting here going one by one through the contacts, we build in those different levels that we need and we get that data. And I'll show you that in a second. Other things to consider, sources. If you're trying to really, make your company boom, but you're sitting there going, well, I have no idea where these people are coming from. Source is where that's going to help answer that question. So if you're trying to grow your business, I would encourage you to track where they're coming from. I have seen it far too often where we are paying for some sort of marketing source that just isn't worth our time. And instead of you just wasting that money, I want you to identify that, hey, this one's paying off. It doesn't, break the bank on us. That one, we're spending X amount a month. Why? This, again, really helps answer that question. The other thing I'd encourage is, of course, that referred by. Whoops, let me scroll back up. That referred by field. If you have someone who's just an absolute rock star and sends out your name at like every opportunity possible, this is a good way to help keep track of that so that way we can thank them. That thanking is a very easy concept, but it goes a long way. It just keeps that relationship going. Other basic information that I would say is obvious not to skip on: date of birth. That's a good way to, again, recognize your clients. Tax ID, kind of sort of need that. It's really important. Gender, again, same concept. Marital status, this can be helpful, again, when it comes to what I'd consider client recognition. If you want to, recognize that, hey, they've been married for 25 years. Well, if you don't have this in here, that'd be a little hard to figure out. And of course, the servicing and writing advisor. This is a good way to help identify responsibility. If you do not use this and you've got multiple advisors in your office, again, it becomes a little trickier to find that data quickly. If you have it where there's 5 different servicing advisors and you're using this, those searching and those reporting options, again, will become simple in the long run. So use these fields. When it comes to missing, how do I even find that? Do I expect you to go contact by contact? Absolutely not. I wouldn't do that. I'm not going to have you guys do that. But other things that I want to point out while we're on this page is that basic Rolodex information. Usually me selling this piece isn't hard. This is usually the one piece everyone has, but there's one little piece, and I'm going to double down on it later. Make sure you have primaries listed in here. So if you see right here, I know it's a little hard. If you're blind like me, this is probably incredibly difficult to see. But when you have something marked as primary, it bolds that little wording right over here. Why is that so important? If you ever try to send a bulk email outside of Redtail, it's going to pull the primary email that is on file. If nothing is marked as primary, it will fail. So save yourself the headache, mark it as primary. If you ever try to do something via snail mail and you're pulling labels or you're pulling a mail merge, those are, again, going to pull the primary address on file. When you add a new contact into Redtail, by default, it already marks it by that primary. But again, it starts to get complicated when you have multiple values in here. You just want to make sure at least something is marked within your phone, your email, and your address. One more thing, and then we'll get into the whole searching. How do I find all of this missing information? The families. This is a hill I will die on. Every single contact that you really have as a client should be attached to a family. Family is that way to connect a contact to another. So if you have a husband and wife and they're all there just kind of floating out on their own islands, connect them to that family. Again, why is this so important? Well, when it comes to, if you turn on an integration that pushes into accounts, instead of you having to go to one individual contact, you could see the whole family account in one page. Same concept. If you have a note that's on, my case, Maggie, but I add a note on John's record tomorrow, I can show the family notes, aka I could see both records in one sitting. So again, instead of you having to click over 1,700 different links, have it all connected with that family. This is one thing I'm going to stress: create a consistent family name. I don't recommend making this super complex. You could do something along the lines like the investor family, as you see here. It could be, the whole Mr. and Mrs. It could be the first name and other first name, last name. So again, John and Maggie Smith, or whatever the case might be. Again, it doesn't matter. I don't care to be right on this. I don't care which route you really go, but I just want you to be consistent. That's where I do care. So whatever format you do, keep it along the way. If someone is not married, is that an exception to the rule? No, they should still have a family name. Again, why is this so important? If you were to ever pull the just head of household for a list for mailing or bulk sends, and you don't have that person listed in there, they will not be in that list. So again, you're keeping it consistent. You're creating those head of households. If you do have someone who is perpetually single like myself here, you could just put the first and last name. So again, it would just be Maggie Investor in that case. So again, don't overcomplicate it, but it can be something very useful in the long run. All right, I've talked your ears off in terms of contact that is there and keeping that accurate. But how do we even find out what's missing? Well, we're going to come into one of my absolute favorite tools in Redtail, and I'm not sarcastic about this. I do absolutely love this tool. It is the advanced search. So if I come on over to contacts on the left and then advanced search at the top, we're going to get these lovely little blank fields where we're going to fill in these questions. So if I wanted to find out if anyone is even just missing a status, I'm going to create a search that looks like this. Now, I know what you all are thinking. Catherine, by default, it goes in as not specified. There should physically be no one who has a status missing. Not true. If you have done a CRM transition recently and you have imported those contacts in here, it is possible that that status field is in fact empty. Now, ideally, when we run this, we should have no one. We have a perfect example here. This is a scenario where that contact is missing that. So again, how would I even go about doing that? I'm just going to open this contact in a new record, pull it on over here. I just come over and edit, change them to what they're actually supposed to be. In this case, I'm going to say they're a prospect hot. I update it. Boom. I've got that status now updated. So when I come back here and I hit that run, that person no longer fits that need. So this is the one time I'm going to say when you do a search, the goal should be to have 0 records on this list. You could do a very similar concept with the category. Now, category is a heck of a lot easier to have contacts that are missing because Redtail does not default a category in your contact record. So if you are following along and doing this in your own database and you're looking at your search results or it's still spinning because it's that many, do not panic. This is, again, something that you have now seen and it's brought to your attention. This should be an area that you do have as an expectation to clean up. So while we're going through here, if you have a absolutely perfect scenario where a majority of the contacts are the same status, I'm just going to click everyone and then I'm going to just unclick a few just so you guys can see it. This is something that you can do in bulk. So again, if I've got a couple contact records selected, I now have contact options as availability. I can come down to that bulk actions where I can update that category in bulk. I could have updated that status in bulk, servicing or writing advisor in bulk. I can add to tag groups in bulk. I can assign keywords in bulk. You get where I'm going with this. A lot of this contact information can be updated. It's just a matter of identifying who belongs to what. So again, these are examples of is empty. Let's talk about a slightly different expectation. I'm going to just hit that advanced search so it clears it out. What if I'm looking at my list of my status and categories and I'm going, ugh, why do we have that? That makes no sense. It is the exact same value. Well, if you're going to merge, or I should say, take something and then put it into a different value, you can do it from this page or you can do it from the back end, and I'll show you that in a second. So let's go ahead and build that out though. If I were to come in here and say, you know what, I've got this category. We don't really use tier 4. I've never been able to justify that. Everyone in tier 4 should just be a tier 3. I can run a quick search like this where I could then bulk update everyone who's in that tier 4 over to that tier 3 with that bulk option. The other option you could do, and I'm going to open this in another tab, and I apologize, I'm always tab happy. I can come to the back end. So I did that by coming to my name and manager account. And we come back here, throw your mouse to the bottom of the page. You're going to come to this admins only section. Now, side note, if you do not see this admins only, that does mean you are not an admin. It's not the end of the world. This is just being able to control how many people have access to this particular section. So if I were to come in here and come to manage database list and I come to that category, and again, I establish I don't want tier 4s anymore, I can come on over here, hit delete, and it'll give me the option to bulk reapply that value. So again, you could do this one of two ways. If it is something where you're just changing from one to another, this could be a very simple way to approach it. If it is something instead where it's missing information, you're going to live, eat, sleep, breathe on this page. So again, that's that whole status and category. Family can also be searched here. So again, if I wanted to know all of the clients that are in my database who are missing a family name, slightly more complicated of a search. Not hard, just a little extra layer. So I'm going to start off the same though. Contact status equal to client this time. Because again, I want to find all of my clients. I'm going to hit that and button. But that and, think of it as like a funnel or a filter. You're working it so it's more specific and just getting the true accurate data out of that. So when I hit that and, it creates this little tab over function. I'm going to come down to family, hit that name, and this time do is empty. Again, the goal should be to have no one. Perfect. This is the one thing our database is clean on. Yay, pat on our own back. But if you do get contacts in here, this is that list that you really should work through. Now, only because, again, I like to keep things realistic. If you have run this search and you're looking at hundreds to thousands of contacts, I would save this search because you're going to do this several times. By no means do I expect you to sit here and go, I can knock out 500 contacts in one database in a day. Your eyes are going to gloss over. I can promise you that right now. Be realistic with your time. I would set aside maybe a couple hours or at least an hour a day or a week. Again, whatever your plan is, stick to it. Remember that whole creative process and stick to it? This is where that's coming into play. So if you save it, it saves it as a quick list where you can quickly, hint, hint, pull that again later on. So eventually you will get to that point where it is 0 records. I can't promise you, like I said, it'll be done in a day, 2 days, 3 days, whatever your expectation is, you'll see that number go down and down and down and down from there. So again, advanced search is a very good tool when it comes to your actual contact data, especially missing information. What else can you use though? There's this lovely little thing still also on the back end. So if you come to your name and manage your account, known as custom export templates, this is kind of like an add-on to the whole searching. So again, if I came back and I was looking at my contacts and I just pulled all of them because I want to know everyone's status, everyone's category, everyone's family name, everyone's servicing. Again, I just keep going and going and going. Instead of you going one by one by one, you could build out a custom export template that would have what exactly you're looking for. So I'm just going to pull this one here really quick. You select the fields you want in here. It basically translates into the columns in Excel. Then you can actually work in Excel. And I know someone's already going to ask this question, so I'm going to say it now. Well, Catherine, there's no way to import that data back into Redtail. Not by you specifically, but Redtail's support team will help you with that. So again, if you're looking at thousands of contacts and no one has a category, it may be easier to work over in an Excel spreadsheet, be realistic with your time, work in manageable chunks, update all of that detail. And once it's ready, you can send it off to the import team where they will take that information and import it for you. So again, this is kind of that part 2 with it. It is, like I said, going to create an Excel spreadsheet with whatever data you're pulling, whether it's all your contacts or a specific list of contacts. It'll then take it to that Excel where you can work with it. One tip I'm going to stress on this one, do not select every single thing on this page. That is the database backup. You will get an error if you try to do that. Again, work in, I hate this phrase, but it makes sense, digestible chunks. Work on just status and category, maybe sourcing advisor and writing advisor first, then tackle family, then tackle account information, then tackle keywords. Again, you set those little things in motion. But usually priority number 1 is getting that client or prospecting list. So again, once you have it built out, you save it. These translate again into the columns in an Excel. Once you have it built out, now you can run it again against a specific list. Or like I said, you can run it against all contacts. You just select all. Just for the sake of it loading, I won't do that to you guys. I select everyone, contact options, custom exports are right here. It's just a matter of finding what you just named it. And again, you can use that report over and over and over again. I'll hint at that later on. But again, that's where that's really going to come into play. Couple more things, then we'll get back to that whole presentation that we're talking about here. So I also mentioned open activity items and open workflows. How in the world do I even deal with that as well, though? That's where your dashboard and your workflows page is going to come into handy. So right here, hopefully you've seen this button. It's very easy to miss, though. I will admit that. Click on that past due. This is going to show you anything that you personally, defaults to me, anything that you have past due. So don't be us, where we have things from 2023 or from several months ago. Again, we want to make sure that the items that are in here, A, have actually been completed, or B, if they haven't, they get rolled over to today's schedule. If you click on something, you'll have a couple of options under activity. One is to complete it. So again, if it is legit done, please mark it as complete. If you need to reassign it, because again, maybe that person's no longer with us, or they're on vacation, or they're out on maternity leave, whatever the case might be, you could take that over. Reschedule throws it into any day in the future. Rollover takes it from whatever day it existed in the past to today's schedule. I tend to do this first thing in the morning, just because again, things happen. I don't get through everything that I plan to in a day. Life loves to interrupt. I roll those items over. Please do not delete. I'm a firm believer that information was in here for a reason. Do not delete it unless it's legit a human error. Sometimes I'll go in here and go, oh, I didn't add that. Yes, I did. I added in twice. That is the one exception to deleting those items. So again, past due, I'd encourage hopping in here. I'll be realistic. If you can't buy into once a day, I'd at least stress once a week, but I would encourage trying to make this part of your day-to-day actions. Last but not least, of course, is that workflows concept. So I'm going to shock everyone. You're going to click on workflows on the left-hand side. This will show you every single active workflow in your entire database. Again, if you are looking at your own right now and you are seeing things from 2015, probably not ideal, right? This is where you can come in here and really start to clean this up. Depending again on what it is, this may be a situation where you want to delete that information. I try not to. I usually would encourage coming in here if it's something where you're just like, hey, I'm cleaning this out, I'm just closing it. Click on that workflow. You can add an outcome that can actually complete a workflow early. So I can say in here, cleaning up database. If my keyboard wants to work, there we go. Cleaning up database, closing workflows. I'll keep it simple here. Create that new outcome. Again, basically what that just did is it gives me the option to get out of jail free here. Mark as finished, complete it. I'm done with that. So again, if you know you have actually worked through that process, but it is just so old and archaic, it's just dragging your system down, add in a quick outcome like that, it completes it out. Your database will slowly get up to speed. So again, those are all those different items, wrong direction, that we're talking about when it comes to what data you should focus in on. When you focus in on those particular items, one, your system will run faster, but two, the reports you run will be so much easier to pull. Your day-to-day looking at what you need to get done will reflect truly what you need to get done. All right, let's keep pushing forward though. What tips do I have? So I've talked about all of these things, and hopefully some of this has been really helpful so far. I want to keep adding to that usefulness. So one thing that I haven't brought up truly yet is this whole concept of a style guide. I'm sure if you've hopped onto any of our webinars in the past, you've heard us say this word before, but your style guide is really your cheat sheet to your database. It helps define what you put in there and what that value really means. So we'll take a deeper dive into some examples when it comes to that style guide, but I would really, really encourage creating, or if you've created one in the past, revisiting it to make sure it is in fact accurate. Other things, again, I'm going to double down on this piece as well. Make sure your Rolodex information actually has that whole primary concept. Again, I see it all the time where we're like, oh yeah, everyone has an email. And then we try to send a bulk email and it fails 200 out of the 210 people. You want to make sure that is a primary. That is something else that the Redtail support team can, again, help with. It's just getting that bulk updated. But that is a piece that you do want to make sure you have for those emails, for those labels, for the mail merges. All of those need that primary detail. This is one that may come as kind of a painful little shock. Dedicate the time to clean up. There's shockingly only 8 weeks left until 2025. When someone pointed that out to me, I sat there and went, oh my God, okay. But again, we have 8 weeks. That's still a good set of time where we can start to begin that cleanup process. And if our data isn't super, super bad, you can probably get through it pretty quickly. Again, it's just a matter of creating that process and just truly diving into it. But the last one is one that you really have to sell yourself on and sell your team on. Involve the team. It's one thing to take the time to clean up all this information. It's another to have everyone buy in as to how and why it is valuable to have clean data in your CRM. And I know that sounds obvious, but you would be surprised the amount of time you can get pushback when it comes to making changes that will, again, help simplify the process. So again, involve the team. If you can divide and conquer when it comes to cleanup, those 8 weeks will fly by and it will, in fact, have accurate data. Well, how can I maintain that though? Again, it's one thing to say all of these things today. It's another to make sure that we do in fact roll all of this out and continue to have that clean data. So again, hitting on that style guide. It again should exist to help explain those values, but it should stay accurate. Again, we'll see it all the time where we'll create a style guide. We add a bunch of keywords. We end up adding new categories because we inherited a new book of business that has brand new clients in here. You may end up adding new user-defined fields and no one knows about it. When you have that style guide, again, it's that centralized location that has every single value in your database and why it's important that we use it. So again, make sure you have a style guide and make sure it's easy to be found. It's another thing that I'll see all the time where it's like one person put their life and soul into it and then no one knows where it's at. Again, this should be a reference document that you have. The next one, I alluded to it earlier. I am going to really stress it now. Create a CRM maintenance workflow. So again, if you want to make sure no one's missing a status, no one's missing a category, everyone has a family, everyone has the proper keywords, everyone has the proper user-defined fields, that we have, all of the Rolodex information. Those are list of items to get done, which creates a checklist. Checklist is another way to look at workflows. It's a list of things that we need to get completed to make sure our database is staying maintained. I'll show you one briefly in just the end of this, but a CRM maintenance workflow is valuable with that. With that said, assign ownership to ensure sustainability of clean data. Again, coming back to like the whole servicing and writing advisor, if we don't actually have who really owns that contact record, I guarantee you it is going to get out of control. You're going to have old data. You're going to have data that doesn't get updated. You're going to have data that never gets entered. You want to make sure that everyone has a clear understanding of who really owns it, and then as well as who owns that CRM maintenance workflow. I do usually put this on one person's shoulder. They can end up really tagging in to our coworkers because there may be times where like, I don't know who this person is, but it's at least getting one person to make sure that at least once a quarter, you are checking in on that contact data. I usually encourage running it at least at first, especially for really just taking that initial step into the cleanup world. I'd encourage running it sooner, so at least monthly, but you are going to find that as people start to get into that rhythm, you can push off to be more quarterly, and you'll probably run through it a heck of a lot faster because you'll start to get those whole searches where there's zero in there, and that's a good thing. The last thing is actually something to kind of trickle in or sprinkle in through the whole process. You do not have to wait until that quarterly Redtail maintenance workflow to update this information. And in fact, many times I'll see it where people will incorporate this into your review schedules. So if you plan to meet with someone even just once a year, that's a good time to check to make sure that the address you have on file is accurate, to make sure that the AUM reflects what you have established for that category. Maybe they've grown in terms of that. To make sure the family is still accurate. I can't tell you how many times I'm surprised when I still see families that are married and they've been divorced for 5 years. Again, if you have children in there, those children can become of age where they themselves can be clients. So again, it's really a matter of incorporating that into that post process to make sure they have those keywords in there, those statuses, and any of that, again, updated contact record information. You can sprinkle it in here where it does hit it another time in that year. All right, couple other things. That style guide. So again, I've said it probably at least 4 times if anyone's keeping track. Style guide, again, is that cheat sheet. So I wanted to provide you of an example, at least of that status. So again, at the top, we have really what it means, because again, you may hire someone new and they're going to sit there and go, what's the status? Well, it's again, status, that highest level used to identify those contacts in the CRM. It's answering, who is this person? This can be, again, a physical brick and mortar business. It can be a person that we have a revenue generating relationship with. That's that client. It could be those relative of clients, the spouses who we know about, but they never come in, or the children who are, again, under the age of 18. It could be center of influences. Now, I do want to point out one here that does tend to cause a slight confusion. We have center of influence, and then we have professional networks. Center of influence is where we have a referral relationship. So if I send them referral business or they send contacts my way, that is a center of influence. A professional network is one where we do not have that referral relationship. So again, think about those attorneys that we know exist out in that world. We may want that contact in there so that way if we ever did need to contact them for whatever reason, we have it. But again, I'm not sending business their way. They're not sending business my way. So it's a good way to help delineate that. Some that go under the radar that are shockingly obvious, but again, don't get implemented, deceased contacts or inactives. I will say it, some will leave us willingly, some not so much. And that's where that whole deceased versus inactive comes into play. So again, if you have someone who says, you know what, nope, I'm going to go with another advisor, you can switch them to inactive. I know some people immediately just go, delete the contact. I don't need them. Absolutely not. I have seen it very often where a contact could leave you or a client can leave you, but they could come back. It's a heck of a lot easier switching their status back to client than completely reinventing the contact record. So again, having this definition to apply with what that value or that status is really, again, helps with not only your current employees, but should you ever grow and hire someone new, they now have something that they can reference, so they're not asking you the same questions over and over and over again. You're again going to have the same concept when it comes to those categories. So I did shorten this. This is a heck of a lot longer. I will promise you that. But again, your categories, we're adding those values. So as you can see here, we've got a couple different businesses in here. We have those vendors. We have those clients' employers. I'm going to say this really fast. How many of us are aware of that when we add in a context employer, it creates a separate business record? Don't want anyone to panic, but those usually clog up your not specified list. I'd encourage adding client's employer as a category. So that way, if you ever did want to know who is just that, you have a value with it. But again, when it comes to those clients, you should have a segmentation in here. Does it have to be the tier 1, 2, 3, 4 model that I have showing here? No. I have seen A, B, C, D, A, AA, AAA. I've seen mountain ranges. I saw like cowboy terms. I've seen surfing terms. Again, they made 0 sense to me. But when I looked at their style guide, it did make sense to me. And that's the point. If you have this category and you have it listed out, anyone can come and look at this and go, they fall under here. Clearly, they should be marked as this. That's, again, where you're going to have that true understanding and consistency in your office. If you do not provide this with people and you just go tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, I guarantee you each advisor is going to have their own definition. You want to have consistency. I keep pushing forward. Besides the status and category, what else should be in your style guide? This is where I'm going to say expand the fields. Sources. So again, we talked about this earlier. This is where the contexts are coming from. Think about marketing. So this could be client referrals, center of influence referrals. It could be from your website, an internet lead. It could be from a seminar that you hosted. It could be just, again, a flat out marketing campaign, radio or TV lead. If you are using any of those methods to get contacts, and I guarantee you the client referral is at least one of those, you should have those sources in there. Again, this is something that can really add value. Keywords and user-defined fields. I will admit right now, these are the 2 lists that tend to grow as your business grows. But again, that's where you should update your style guide. Keywords is kind of that inherent yes or no question. Yes, they are a tax client. No, they're not. These are, again, those kinds of keywords. Keywords can help group contacts together, kind of like that 3rd level status category keywords to help identify maybe what type of client they really are, or again, anything in particular when it comes to maybe like event scheduling. User-defined fields is that open Q&A. I tend to find this is one of the most underutilized tools within Redtail, and it actually breaks my heart because, again, this is a custom field for you. If there is any question that you wish you could track over and over and over again in Redtail, but the answer varies every single time, that is a user-defined field. So you could set that up as an any text. It could be a list of values that you pick from. It could be a yes or no question or a true false question. Again, this could be anything that you find valuable. I tend to include more like personal data. So questions that I tend to love answering in there. Alma mater, where do they go to school? That's an easy, good conversation. I really love sports. I'm really into college football. And if I see that someone went to a certain one, that's an easy conversation for me to have. Military. I don't live far from a military base. Again, that's a good way for me to track. So I know, hey, you're part of the Air Force, not the Marines. Because if I say the wrong one, I will offend them and I don't want that. So again, it could be anything that you consider that personal data that you would love to have when it comes to maybe those discussions and reviews, or again, just that useful information. Other things to consider, activity types and categories. So while we talked about those past due activities, something else that can be helpful is really defining what those different items or those to-do items that you have to do. Activity types, again, is really what's blocking my calendar. So it could be a review meeting. It could be an introductory call. It could be a staff meeting. Any of those things that, like I said, is taking physical time, think of activity types. Activity categories, not to be confused with contact categories. I know Redtail wasn't super creative here, but activity categories is where you can help describe what that activity is actually about. Were we talking about that when they needed to do a rollover? Did we talk about that they moved, an address change? This list is, again, a rather lengthy one because it's literally anything that's taking up your time. So I'm just going to spout a bunch of different examples: account transfers, account closures, Roth conversions, rollovers, address changes, move money, check deposits. All of those would be perfect examples of activity categories. One thing to keep in mind, categories is shared with notes and workflows. That's a good thing because, again, those processes tend to overlap, the very big gray area, Why it's shared between activities, notes, and workflows is because when activities and workflows are done, they end up becoming notes in the long run. So that's why that category list being a little long is actually a good thing. It's easier to pull reports with that category. Last but not least is opportunity stages. This is another one that doesn't tend to get a lot of love. Opportunities is your sales pipeline. By default, you do have two stages, a closed one and a closed loss. While those are helpful to close out an opportunity, it answers absolutely nothing while you're in the thick of it. So opportunity stages is a good way to help you get kind of like a 20,000 feet up or 30,000 feet up view of where you're at in the process of that sales pipeline. So again, it could match up with the different meetings that you have, like an introductory or discovery or plan presentation. Again, this is one that I do tend to see vary quite a bit because again, it is going to be specific to your database. So let me hop back in really, really quickly here just to kind of point out a couple of things, because I'm sure if you're newer into Redtail, some of this is like a whole foreign language. So when you are looking at a contact, and I'm just going to pull Maggie open super quick here. When you're on a contact record, again, that's the basic information, status category sources. And if you keep scrolling, that's where you're going to see keywords, toggle just to the right. That's where you're going to see those user defined fields. So again, all of these details, values, specific information is going to help you, again, really just dive in for everything you need to know about that contact without you having to go into 5, 6 different integrations or platforms. You have it all front and center. That's why I really encourage you having that style guide, keeping it all there. All of this also tends to live in that back end. So again, if I come up to my name and that manager account, we'll head back to that managed database list. When you're in here, you're going to see the keywords, the categories, the servicing, the writing advisors, the user defined fields, the sources, they're all back here. So again, that's why I really stress this can be super specific for your database, which will help with the whole reporting. Again, the whole concept here is you want to have it organized. So that way it's not taking you an hour to find the information you're looking for. It's taking you 2 seconds to find that information. The easier and the better you have this list, the easier those searching and reportings will eventually become. All right, let's come back. I promised you earlier I talk about this workflow, so I am going to finally hit this workflow itself. So again, I've talked about the process. I'm going to take a full circle here. We ourselves do this workflow as well. This is our maintenance workflow. So it does have you go through each of those different items that I've talked about, and actually even has like the step-by-step instructions on how to pull that information. I can safely say there are some things I can do in my sleep. I've lived in this world for many years, but every now and then Redtail likes to do a little update or they change something and I'm like, ooh, what's that? And again, that's where I want to make sure I update my process as well. So let me hop into the database. This is a short little version. I want to actually give you like the full concept here. This is one I do not recommend going on a contact record. I would actually just pull open your business record. So side note, if you do not have your own firm as a business record in your database, I'd recommend it. Why? Well, because everything you do can then be building up in here as well. So think about it. You build out your client's database, your contact record, you add in those notes, those activities of what you have to do, what they add. You're doing the same thing with your own business record. So as you do that quarterly maintenance and you're going, when did I last do this? Pull open your contact record, it'll be there. So again, I'm going to just manually launch this. I'm going to come on up to that create button. I'm going to come down to workflows. I'm going to let Redtail think for a hot second, and I'm going to scroll until I find my quarterly Redtail maintenance. Let it load for a second. It filled in my category perfectly. Chef kiss. I'm going to leave it for today's date, and I'm going to go ahead and hit that create and edit so we can get to the actual workflow. Let Redtail think. Sometimes it takes a hot second. It's got a lot to load. We'll give her a moment, but this is what we'll end up getting. I, again, have it assigned to our operations team, whole responsibility. This is where we can work through it. So again, if I'm sitting here going, review the client status, what does that even mean? I can hover over it or click on the actual task and you'll see how to do that. So this is where I'm going to encourage, have multiple tabs open. You can have however many you want in a browser, keep it reasonable, but you can have multiple. So I usually will pull this open. I'll have my advanced search as another tab, and I'll quite literally just roll through this. As I've completed this, I mark it as complete and I keep going through this. One thing to point out, if you're in the mood where you're like, I don't want to go in this order, reviews are killing me because the workflows are a hot mess, you can technically do any of these tasks in any order. I personally always like to work top to bottom. But again, if you're dividing and conquering, maybe there's multiple people on the operations team. I'm going to take everything from sources down. The other person's going to take everything from birthday reminders up. You have that list that you could work through. These lists, or this task, I should say, all of these will also populate on your today page if it is assigned to you. So if it is not assigned to you, you will not see it here, but you will see it here and you will see it here. Again, the other reason I always like to have it attached to a contact record, specifically your business record. Sometimes you'll sit there and go, I swear I launched this. Where did it go? I don't even know. I'm losing my mind. Well, again, if you come back to your business record, let me take a couple little steps backwards here. And I come to that contact record and I come to the bottom, you're going to see any of those tasks that are assigned right down here. So it's always, again, a very easy way to quickly pull open to reassure that you are not losing your mind, that you have everything attached in the right place. So again, I know I'm beating a dead horse at this point. Have your own business record here, launch the workflow, and then it really is a checklist at that point. You're just working through that process. Some of it may not apply to you. Some of it may be really specific and may take a little bit more of your time. But again, I would encourage that. This is one of those resources that we will provide to you in that follow-up, along with kind of our style guide that we recommend, as well as the presentation. So a lot of what we talked about has a resource that we will be sending out post this webinar. But again, I would just take your time going through here, really put your head into this, sell it, work through that cleanup, and you will feel that 2025 is a lot less painful than these last couple bits of 2024. Finally, I know I've talked your ears off at this point. How in the world can we help? Well, we have a couple of different options here that we have rolled out. We do offer what we call an operational assessment. So if you're sitting there going, I don't even know, again, still where to begin, I want you to be able to help tell me what my database looks like. That's really where that operational assessment takes place. We'll have that again in the follow-up that helps describe a little bit more about it, the cost, all of that good stuff. If you're not quite ready there, though, you want to know more about us, schedule that introductory call. I'm going to keep this page here. You can use that little link to help schedule that. But again, that's where we can have just a brief little one-on-one discussion to really say, hey, here's what we do. Here's what we want to help you with. Here's the end goal with it. Again, all of that good conversation. If again, you're still not ready for that, what I would at least recommend doing is joining our free community. I am hoping that most of you are already there, but if not, I would recommend it. It's a good space to ask kind of just open questions, get feedback, see how others are doing, see what other people are using and it working out as. Again, it really is a good space to just have an open, safe community of open discussion. All right, I'm going to leave it here. I'm going to kind of sidestep for a second. I did see quite a few questions come through here. I did see one that Allie has flagged here, so I'm going to start off with that one from Robert. When should we use keywords versus tags? I do love this question. Let me come back to Redtail really fast. So I'm going to scroll down. All the way at the bottom, we have keywords and tags. When do I use which? Well, let me stress by saying, I promise you, Redtail did not have a stroke and just set you up for failure by providing you the exact same thing. What I will admit to you, though, is I like to look at these as kind of twins. From afar, they look exactly the same. But when you get up close, that's when you start to notice the differences. Keywords, think internal. Think of these again as yes or no questions, but these are things that you just want to be able to run reports off of within Redtail. Tag groups, think external. Tag groups is a way to help communicate a list of contacts to an integration. So FMG Suite, Snappy Kraken, G Reminders, those are all ones that are easily coming to mind. If you have a list of contacts in that tag group that you wish to do something with, so again, whether it's marketing a newsletter or adding them to a bulk sends to schedule their review, you start with that tag group, you set it up over there, it can read who's on that list, and then do whatever the steps are that it's supposed to get done. So again, easy way to think of it, keywords, internal and internal only, tag groups, anything that you want to do external information with. All right, let's see what else we got in here. Okay. What are specific details that need to be captured for Redtail to make the bulk edit via Excel forms, i.e. contact ID, client? Great question, Tara. So the bare minimum that Redtail needs is the contact ID. So if I scroll back up here, oh, this one doesn't even have it. Bad example. I should pull open a contact. I do remember this here. When it comes to a contact, it should exist over here on the contact details. So if I scroll on down, there it is right there. That always shows up. Do I expect you to just like copy and paste that every time? No. I would never ask that of you. Anytime you pull a export, because that's always going to be in Excel, anytime you pull an export out of Redtail, column A is always contact ID. Do not delete that. If you delete that and then just try to send the contact information over to Redtail, you're going to get a new cleanup, which is cleaning up a bunch of duplicates. It creates a brand new contact record. So keep the contact ID. Everything else is really where it could depend. I always insist bare minimum here, contact ID, full name, first name, last name. The full name I pull specifically because if it's a business, trust, or association, and you don't pull the full name, it's going to look like a blank contact, and you're going to sit there and go, who is this? If you have the full name, it fills in that information. So those are the basics. Then from there it's where I get the whole depends. If you're updating contact information like status and category, how we approach it is you have the current status and then another column that says updated status. So you can see what those changes are. And then you just have to be specific when you actually email that into Redtail on that ticket and just say, hey, please update column E and G, because these are the contact information for the contacts listed in column A contact ID. So again, it really just depends on what you're listing out, but bare minimum is always first name, last name, and full name. All right, next question I have here. When multiple advisors, assistants use Redtail, can this cleanup be utilized for one person versus the whole team? It can be however you wish, I've got to be honest. I've seen it where there's multiple like switch-in users, and that's where it can get really fun. I'd always encourage having that style guide be based consistently across every advisor. I don't always love it when I have like 3 advisors in there and it's like advisor one's like, I'm going to do it my way because my way is best. Not always. Just because it's what's worked doesn't mean it's always the most efficient. So I usually do encourage it being a whole team kind of process, but when it comes to the actual doing of tasks, updating the statuses, updating category sources, keywords, all that good stuff, usually it does tend to fall on one person. Ideally, it's always nice when you can divide and conquer because it'll get done faster, but hopefully that helped. Next one from Michael. It doesn't get love because opportunities needs to be revamped. Really struggle organizing and filtering opportunities. I will be completely frank with you as well. It is one of my hopes for 2025 that the opportunities can be more robust. To me, it is a very basic tool. It's a lot of just fill in the blanks. So that's why I always consider that just like a high level. Here's where I'm at with it. I'm crossing my fingers though. And the second that that thing gets more love, you guys will all hear about it because I will shout it from the rooftops. So I completely agree. Holly here. I don't believe that identities, actually, I think I read that wrong, but I don't believe they identify those who have an email address, but where no email address is checked, mark as primary, does it? This is where custom exports is going to be your best friend. So if you were to just try to find contact by contact who's here, again, this is painful. I guarantee your eyes are going to be like bloodshot. Just no. Come on over to that custom export section again, because what you can pull, sorry, let me get there, I go a little slow there. When you're in here, you could pull primary email, you could pull other email, home. Where's the other one? I know I'm missing one. Where's work email? You can pull all of those. What I'll usually recommend is to have just a cleanup on email, just to clean up on phone, just to clean up on address. Why I recommend that is because you can pull technically like all 4 of those. And then if you realize that, hey, no one has a primary, but everyone has a home email address that they want, just switch the header to primary, send that to Redtail and say, hey, please update these all to primary, and you're done. So that is something that, again, it isn't really something you can come in here and bulk update using the bulk actions, but it is something that you can go through a custom export and have Redtail really update in the background. Why would you add a new contact as association or union? I can honestly tell you, I think I count on probably 1 or 2 fingers how many times I've actually added that. This is really where it gets contact specific or business specific. I've had a couple of clients in the past who work with a lot of unions specifically. That is why. But if you are asking that question, I can promise you right now, you could ignore those 2 types. I would probably recommend just sticking with business and individual. You may find trust to be useful as well, but again, it's usually very, 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 very specific based on what your book of business looks like. So not a wrong answer if you do not use those two. All right, couple more here. I know I'm getting to the very, very tail end of it, so I apologize. I'm going a little fast here. Next one's coming in from Alyssa. Can you share how to create users as a team and list those instead of individuals on workflows? I love this question so much, 100%. Yes, we can. So let's take a little detour back to the back end really fast. This is kind of a two-step process. Come on down to the very bottom. You're going to come to manage database users and teams. Let Redtail think, and then towards the top under that search context, hit teams. This actually is also a two-step process. You're going to add the team name first. Do not overcomplicate this. I mean, if you want to have fun with it, go for it, but make sure it's not something where you're like, what in the world? I've done that a few times where I'm like, I don't know what this means. Operations team, all staff, just the name of the person, however you want to do it. You pick the name, add the team first. If you just did that, you'll end up with what's happening here. If you do not take the next step here, this is still going to no one. So I want to come over here to this little action icon, click add or remove team members, select who's supposed to be in here. So I'm going to say here in our demo, I'm going to update that team. Both of those contact records are now part of that financial planning team. So this is part one. Part two, come back to the manage your account section, come to your workflow templates. If you have never built out a workflow, do not panic when mine loads. Yours is just going to be a nice, clean, blank slate. It's totally okay. I'm going to go ahead and actually just click on one really quick just so I can show you where this shows up. But if I come right on over here, assignees is where this can come into place. With workflows, you have four options. You have user, you have team, role, and creating user. I'm going to start at the bottom. Creating user is exactly how it sounds. It's whoever is going to launch that workflow. So if 5 different people can launch that workflow and 5 different people need to work through that, creating user is a perfect example of that. Role is where it gets context specific. I might be opening a can of worms here, so I apologize, but role is where I can come to an actual contact record, come on over to more, come to roles, and assign out who their advisor is, who their associate advisor is, and who their CSA is. If I do that and I come over here and I say, hey, role of advisor, and I assign this workflow over to Jill, it's going to read whoever is here. If no one's listed like this, guess what? It goes to no one. So be very cautious with roles. Teams though, team is actually my favorite because I know for a fact it goes to someone because I built out that team. When you pick team here, you just pick the applicable team. I want to say that financial just because that's the one I picked on a couple minutes ago. It will assign to whoever is part of that team. I personally like to use a lot of teams for just a team of one. Why? Why don't you just use user, Catherine? That makes it so much easier. You could just find your name in there. I don't like that for one big reason. If I ever won the lottery and I could go and retire tomorrow, I don't want my team to have to come in here and update every single workflow one by one for every single thing that was individually assigned to me. If you use team instead, you just go back to that team, switch out who's going to be fulfilling my role now, and now it goes ahead and assigns it to that person. So that's why I recommend teams. Again, it is a multi-step process. You have to create the team, assign it to the person, and then come into the workflow. But it does help prevent having to come in one by one if anyone ever leaves, retires. I don't want to think the worst, but if they ever just leave, it's a very, very quick way to bulk update that. All right, I have talked your guys' ears off. Let me get back to that slideshow really fast. Again, I've got that screenshot for you here, but if you do have any questions, please don't be shy about it. We are always very happy to help. If you can't tell, we love geeking out about this information, but I do appreciate you all joining me today. So thank you so much. I know you guys are busy bees. Like I said, it's the end of the year. This is usually when it's crazy. So I can't thank you all enough for taking an hour of your time talking with me. Thank you again, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.